Welcome to the Adam Messer Show. I'm your host, Adam Messer, and you are listening to us on WRUULP Savannah, Georgia, 107.5 FM, WRUU.org. We are Savannah Soundings Community Radio with Global Soul. And my special guest today is John Hartness, who is a publisher and a writer. And we were right before the break for the 4 o'clock hour. We were talking about Saga, the convention for writers. So, John, tell me more about the convention and what you're going to be doing. You were saying before you don't want to be the best known author in the room, which makes sense. What
Yeah,
kind of things are
I
people going to be
want,
able to do at the convention?
there will be two tracks. There will be a business track and a craft track.
Mm-hmm.
And when you go to a typical science fiction and fantasy convention, the programming is mostly panels.
Mm-hmm.
So you'll have 4 or 5 writers and a moderator, and the moderator has a list of half a dozen questions or so. And they'll ask a question, and each panelist will chime in with their answer. So if the panel is an hour long, and you've got 5 people there, well, the first couple of minutes, the first 10 minutes of the panel is everybody introducing themselves and talking about their newest product.
Right, right.
Then you get through 3 or 4 questions, and each writer gets 2 minutes or so per question. And then you're done with your hour, and you've maybe heard 10 minutes from each person on the panel. The focus of Saga is going to be on workshops and solo presentations so that the presenter, our faculty member, can really dive deep into a topic and drill home on some of the issues and get a deeper dive into these things than you typically get at a sci-fi and fantasy con.
Yeah, because
For
you hear the
example,
same questions over and over again. And
yeah,
I'll be honest with you, I've been interviewing people for a long time. Well, I don't say a long time, but over almost 6 years now, professionally. And every once in a while, a person will say, "Oh, no one's ever asked me that before." It's rare because they hear the same questions over and over and over again. I'm sure you do
yes,
too.
we do.
Yeah. And
Oh,
so,
yeah.
so what's a question or what's something that someone's never asked you that you wish would have come up? Because you're a panel guest at a lot of these things too.
Whew. Uh,
Not to put you on the spot, John.
yeah, not to put me on the spot, but come up with this immediately. Um,
Well, you're a writer, you're a creator, so physician, heal
I
thyself.
really, I really would like more of an opportunity to talk about the influence of music on my writing because I am a huge music
Ooh,
lover.
I listen to music when I write too.
I do. I absolutely do. I've got the new Echo Dot sitting here next to my desk, and I have to be very careful when we're talking about this, or the
I'll start
the
playing.
robotic voice will chime in and ask me what I'm telling her to do, and then randomly start playing music,
Okay.
which is not what I want right now.
Right, right,
But
right.
no, I have playlists. I find that I write fight scenes to old Nine Inch Nails or Rob Zombie,
Yeah, a little harder core stuff from the '90s. I
and
was
I
born in
don't.
'76, so I'm like right there with you. Like the
Yeah,
stuff that you were, you're just a couple years ahead of me, and like I would have been a freshman when you were a senior in high school. I graduated in
yeah.
'94, so same era. I remember. Oh my gosh, I remember talking about that. I remember when Nirvana, the Teen Spirit song came out, like in '90 or whatever. And it was the first time like I'd ever heard anything about grunge, and then it was all of a sudden Pearl Jam, and it's like, man, this is a whole different world out there. And my
And I
son,
was just old enough to not get into grunge,
yeah, my son is
but
into death and thrash metal, and I'm like, oh my gosh. So he's introduced me to a lot of new stuff, and I'm like, dude, that's so cool.
and I'm so much more into the Americana and bluegrass and folk music now that it's a big shift for me when I'm writing fight scenes to switch over to the harder style music because most of the time got to have a banjo
Do
for
you
me to be
know,
into it.
have you ever heard of Randy Wood, the world-class luthier? He's made
Uh,
instruments for like Johnny Cash, the Beatles,
okay.
Willie Nelson.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
He is, it's so crazy because, you know, we always talk about, well, not when I say we, I'm just collectively talking about, you find fame in other places, not your own backyard. He's this guy that is in Bloomingdale, Georgia, which is right outside of Savannah. And he hosts this thing every year called Randy's Annual Jam. It's a bluegrass Americana music festival. People travel from
Nice.
all over for this 3-day little music festival. And Randy's got this, you know, music shop, and he's got a workshop in the, you know, connected to it, where he, you know, he makes, you know, guitars, and he makes, oh, he's really well known for his fiddles, and ukuleles, and, you know, string instruments or whatever. But I love Americana. I love bluegrass music too. And, you know, it's just something about actually being in front of someone playing right there that I don't know how to describe it, but yeah, it just, you know, you feel that energy, you feel that vibration of the music. And I totally connect with that. I love that.
And from working in the music business for a while as a lighting technician and a designer,
Mm-hmm.
all of that still resonates really strongly with me. So I absolutely write to music, and
I was a
I
record
don't
store
go
manager for a while, so it was like,
nice.
I never did any music. I'm not a musician. My son is, but I still, you know, love, you know, that's one of the things I was talking about. I did this poetry book, and people were like, oh, I don't like poetry. I'm like, well, do you like music? Yeah. I was like, you like poetry because music is poetry.
Yeah. I also released a book of poetry.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. And I did a reading this year at DragonCon of my poetry.
Really? That's awesome, man.
Yep.
I
was part of Princess Alethea's traveling sideshow, and this is something that Alethea Contis does each year, and she brings in her friends and has her friends do things, unknown talents.
You know, okay, let's sidebar here for a second.
Yeah.
One of the interviews that I did this year was a guy named Brendan Walsh. He's a poet. He came up to Savannah to E. Shaver Booksellers, which is an independent bookseller here in Savannah. It's actually a couple blocks up the road from the station. And I covered it. It was called the Great American Poetry Crawl. And he had a couple of people. I'd never been to a poetry show as an adult. I'd never been to a poetry show in my life. But I covered it. I enjoyed talking with him so much. I wanted to meet him in person when he came up here from Florida. Because, you know, reasons, right? And so I went there, and I was like, oh my gosh, I felt the emotion move me, that I went home and wrote 100 poems in a couple of days.
Wow.
And I put a poetry book out, a booklet called What the Night Taught Me. And it was about romantic love, loneliness, and the midnight hour, my insomnia. And I was talking about the 3 a.m. hour. Like, you know, a lot of creative people, it's like a theme that I hear over and over again. It's like, oh, you know, 3 a.m., you know, here it is, 3 a.m. again. And in the poetry, when I did it, I actually did, this is the first time I'd ever had anything in a bookstore. I asked E. Shavers if I could set up an event. They graciously did the event. I had 12 people show up and listen to the poetry. And what we did, because the panels, I get what you're saying about the panels. It's kind of repetitive and boring, and you don't get to dive in deep. So what I did was, instead of just me doing a reading, you know, we round robin. Everybody there read a poem. They just, you know, randomly picked a poem. And then we talked about, what does this mean to you? You know, because obviously if you're going to come out to an event, first of all, that's a thing. But secondly, if you're coming out to a poetry event, there's something about poetry that you love, and I want to know why. Tell me. So we had a really nice little thing. And so when you did this event with her, talking about the undiscovered talents of people that you might know and you might think you know, what was that like?
It was a lot of fun. Eric Asher is a science fiction fantasy author and a friend of mine, and he played the cello.
Wow.
I had no idea he played cello.
Doesn't that just blow you away when you're like, you can do that?
Yeah, it was great.
Yeah.
Diana Peterfriend did tarot readings.
Mm,
I had no idea she did that.
neat.
So it was just awesome to see these new sides of people that I've known for years.
You know, that's when you really get to know people, when you learn the other stuff. You know, like my wife and I, we've been married 20 years this year, and we've been together like 22, 23 years.
Mm-hmm.
I learn new things about her all the time, you know? And I think the same thing with my friends. It's like when you learn something, you're like, what? You do that? I didn't ever do that. It's like, I've known you for 10 years. How did I not know you play the cello?
Yeah.
Well, it never came up in conversation, so.
And that's how it was for me. A lot of people who were on the stage with me, or a lot of people that were in the audience who knew me,
Mm-hmm.
had no idea I wrote poetry.
I didn't know. You never talk about it, so.
No, it's not really. I don't do
What
it
type of
anymore
poetry do you
because
write?
It's kind of redneck storytelling poetry.
Cool.
Pretty much exactly what you would expect.
Okay. The Bubba Hunter type stuff?
I don't do it anymore because I've got so much fiction that I have to turn out every year.
You know, it's crazy that you talk about that, because the other night, doing this NaNoWriMo, I hit the first wall of the project, and I didn't want to write. So I wrote this funny little poem about not wanting to write and procrastinating. And
Mm-hmm.
just, you know, like they say, if you don't feel like writing, just start writing. It'll help you get your juices flowing. And I wrote this little poem about it, and then I was able to belt out my words that I needed for the night for the NaNoWriMo. And
sometimes all you have to do is trick yourself.
yeah, and I totally get, you know, you have so many projects that you're doing, yeah, because like I'm doing this story, but I have several other stories that I've been trying to flesh out and develop in my mind of what I want, but I keep going back to, okay, I'm basically like cheating on my wife by not doing this other story. You know what I mean? It's like I've committed to doing this Blood Thresher story, and this last year I've started over and over again, and it's like this is the time, and like I have to finish this before I can have anything else going on. You know?
Oh yeah.
So I can understand where you're like, I've got, you know, other things to do besides the poems.
Yeah, because I have to finish the next Quincy Harker book
Mm-hmm.
before I go to sleep tonight.
Wow. Today? Wow.
Yeah.
Oh,
I
wow.
mean, I'm close. I'm halfway through the epilogue.
Oh, okay.
So, I mean, I've got maybe 1,000, maybe 1,500 words left.
Nice.
I'm going to be done.
Nice.
So, but I have to finish it because I have to start a new project tomorrow.
Yeah. And see, this is the thing I think people don't understand. When you work for yourself, like I freelance, I do a lot of things for myself. I'm always working on my stuff every day, hours and hours and hours every day. And I'm always constantly pushing forward on those projects. And it's not a 9-to-5 gig, you know?
No.
It's a every waking moment type gig, you know, even.
Well, it is. And it's important to find the times that you can separate from it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sitting here in my office recording this.
Oh, wow.
Well, it's 20 minutes after 4. I've been sitting in this desk chair for most of today since about 8:30 this morning.
Yeah.
And when we're done, I'm going to drive down and meet with my associate publisher on a different set of videos that we're going to start rolling out in January.
Oh, nice.
Then I'm going to come back and I'm going to finish writing the book.
Yeah, and then you have to spend time with your family. Yeah, I mean,
Right.
Yeah, That's one of the things.
So,
Like I do these events and things like that. Like yesterday, just kind of run down like an event. I left the house at like 7 in the morning, and I didn't get home until, I mean, the event ended at 5, and then my son wanted to go to the local record store. It's called Gray Face Records, and so we took him over there, and we went to this art supply store called Starlandia. And after that, we came home. I had to take, do run some errands or whatever, and it was like 8:30 before I really settled back in. And that was before I had written the first word. Really, I did a write. We did a NaNoWriMo write in there, so I wrote about 50
mhm,
words just so I could say I did write something there. But I really didn't have time to write at the event. I was running around like, you do these events and you're like, you run around like a chicken with your head cut off, and everybody wants to, and we had such a great time. But I just said, okay, I've got to write something so I can like check that box off and say I actually did a write in, even though I think I'm still going to do like a write in just to do a write in, just for the write in.
yeah,
But I wanted to be able to say, yes, I committed to it and I did something, even though it was a small, 50-word block, you know? But I think a
right.
lot of
But you
people
did
that
it.
don't do these, they don't. It's hard. Like if you go to a con and you're like, oh yeah, 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 I get to see so and so and so and so, and you're there and you're walking around, and you're having fun. The other side of the table, they're working, and it is sometimes it can be mentally, physically exhausting and draining. And then there's other times where it's like, man, this really rejuvenated my batteries. Like yesterday, I felt invigorated. I belted out 1,800 words in like an hour. You know,
Yeah, I tell new writers that one of the things to remember when you go to a convention, especially a con where you're staying in a convention hotel and
mm-hmm.
you're there on site for 2 or 3 days, I try to make sure people understand that from the moment you walk out of your hotel room in the morning to the moment you walk back into your hotel room, you're on stage.
You're on. Yeah, you're live.
People are
Even in the bathroom,
watching you.
people will stop you in the bathroom sometimes, which I think
Yeah,
is the oddest thing. I'm like, okay.
yeah. I was walking. I officiated a wedding yesterday morning.
I saw that. That was really cool.
Yeah, and it was at the Carolina Renaissance Fair just north of Charlotte. So after the ceremony, I was walking through the fair to go to the joust, and I hear somebody yell out, "Hey, you're my favorite author."
Mm.
And because I have a giant ego, I just assumed they were talking to me. And actually, they were. It was a young
Nice.
lady that I've met a couple of times at that event because they do an annual book signing, and I've been there a few times. But all of a sudden, I had to shift from being John, the person who's officiating a wedding for his friends, to, okay, now I'm writing.
Hmm.
And now I'm writing, and now I'm being public, and I have to be different.
Hmm.
So yeah, it was very nice. It was great to be recognized, but it was still one of these deals where, hey, okay, shift gears automatically, instantly.
Yeah. Well, I look at it kind of like work mode. Like
It is.
it's definitely work mode. I mean, because I bring me wherever I go, but there's different levels of me that you get to see wherever I'm at.
Yeah.
And like for example, I've got a potty mouth and I cuss a lot in certain company. I don't do it in certain situations. Like if I were talking to you, just you and me talking on the phone, I'm pretty sure we would be dropping a lot of F bombs back and forth just because that's the way you talk. And
I may have said that word once or twice in my life.
I know. And I mean, but on the radio, it's not an appropriate time. So it's the same thing when you're out in these, like public venues, you have, and it's not so much like being fake or anything else like that. There are people out there that are fake, but there are people that you can see like, okay, they're very genuine. Like you seem like that, like I haven't met you. This is like the first time we've actually talked, but I can tell, just by the way you act that this is you all the time. There are people
Yeah.
out there that they have the, hey, I'm the Hollywood version of me, and then the people behind the scenes get to see the real, person.
Yeah.
There's a
And
work mode though. You have to have professionalism. So like when you
I
said,
tell
hey,
people,
somebody called out for you, you're
I
like,
tell
hey,
people that
I've
the
got this
me,
obligation to do my job.
I tell people that the me they see at a convention it's the same as the normal me, only the knobs turned up to 13 and ripped off.
Yeah. Well, yeah, there's that too. I mean, like, oh, so con crud, like one of the things, like people that don't do conventions, if you go to a convention, like, and you want to work a convention, like as a, person with a booth, oh gosh, hydrate, 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 wash your
Fist
hands,
bumps.
take a lot of vitamin
Fist,
C, nutrients, whatever. Don't let people breathe on you.
and
Oh my
fist,
gosh.
fist bump, no handshakes.
Yeah, fist bump, no handshakes. Because con crud, I don't know where it came from, but I really think con crud is like the apocalypse, the zombie apocalypse. I think that's how it's going to happen. It's going to start with a bunch of sweaty nerds at a con, and it's going to be an outbreak there, and then just the world's going to die after that.
Yeah, I believe you.
Because I have had the worst illnesses after a convention. Again, I do all the things. I literally do all the things. I wash my hands vigorously, while I'm there. I'm really particular about, the food I eat before, like I'm like, okay, is this food truck really good or am I going to get, food poisoning? Those things. But I mean, I've been so sick after a convention. And then, you're physically drained, emotionally drained anyway from, just the work. But it's easy to put in a 16, 18-hour day or longer sometimes, especially if you're doing something like you do Dragon Con. I mean, that's like, what, 3 full-day event or a 4-day event or
Four.
whatever.
It
You're
is
on
four
like
full.
all day, like 24/7.
It this year was too much. I have to talk to them and back down some next year. I had almost 20 hours of programming.
Wow. What?
There was a period of time on Friday where I didn't have a break for 10 hours,
That's where,
other than
see,
30 minutes between panels, and it took every one of those 30 minutes to get from building to building.
well, that's what I'm saying about like, you got to take care of yourself. And, if you're a person where you don't really have a handler, someone, kind of mitigating that stuff for you, it's hard. You can't, I mean, like if you're a one shot and you're doing it, by yourself and you're trying to get from A to B and you've got to be there on time and, that just sounds like it's just crazy.
Fortunately, this year at Dragon Con, I did have handlers
Oh, okay, good.
because now that I'm running the publishing company, I'm not just writer me,
Right, right,
and
right.
I only have so much brain power, and I can only keep up with so much. So, yeah, I had two different handlers, and they tagged in and out as to who was getting me from place to place and who was making sure I had food.
As a sidebar here, I want to talk to you offline about this, but I've got a local friend that I think would be a good fit as a guest for Dragon Con. But I know a couple different people that are been up there, but I'd like to talk to you about that afterwards. So I just want
Sure.
to put that out there, but I don't want to. I wanted to sidebar there, but um,
Well,
the
it's tough because for a writer, um, figuring out which cons to apply to is a challenge.
yeah.
Figuring out which cons you should expect to get into, which cons you probably won't get into.
Well, not to be funny, but you do a lot of conventions, and so that's one of the reasons why I want to talk to you about it because that's exactly what I wanted to kind of help him because he wants to do some conventions, and
Yeah.
but I told him I was like, you got to be kind of particular about where you go and what you do because I mean, I'm just gonna put it out there. There are conventioneers or convention event planners that are unscrupulous And,
Oh yes.
so when you do these things, you find out like, okay, like you said, people talk. You find out like which ones are the good ones, which ones do you make money at, which ones are duds, but they were a lot of fun, and it's like, those are the kind of things. So that's part of going to events as an author, I think is important. And you have to do the things because people aren't going to get to know you sitting behind the computer. They're just not. I don't care
They're
how
not.
good your story is. You know, I just don't think that's the world we live in today.
Yeah, and with the people interact differently.
Mm-hmm.
Um, People interact with creators differently. Kickstarter has changed people's expectation of interacting with creators.
Yeah. Yeah.
Facebook, YouTube,
Social media.
Instagram,
Yeah.
social media, all of that. And Patreon has changed how people expect to interact with creators, and it's important you're being honest and open and sincere with people when you appear, but it's also important to make sure that you hold something back.
Yeah.
My fans, my readers, they get a lot of me, they don't get all of me.
Yeah. You can't. I mean, like, you have to have your own personal private life. There's just,
Yes.
if you don't have some kind of separation there, then really we're not the Truman Show.
Right.
I
Mean,
just,
we're real people.
yeah, we're, and I mean, I'm not a celebrity at all. I mean, like, I do some stuff here in town, but, I do have a public interaction with people because of the journalism, because I host my
Right.
own events, because I've got, books out there, and I do this radio show. But, people don't know everything about me. There's no way. There's just no way. And it's not like I'm some, weird deviant or anything like that. It's just that
No.
you have your private personal life, you know, and that should be that. You shouldn't. But I think fans sometimes, because of the access through social media and the internet, I think that sometimes they have a blurred line about, like, like, I feel like, I'm making a friend with you. We're getting to know each other, but I don't really know you.
Yeah.
You're a new
Right.
friend.
Yeah.
Sometimes you meet people and they just are too much. So how do you deal with those kind of folks? The
It's
misery kind of
tough.
folks or whatever.
It's tough. My friend Shannon Strucy has a set of videos and has done a documentary on something that they refer to as parasocial relationships.
Ooh, that's
And,
interesting.
and it's when you're a fan of something and you think that means you know the creator or you know the person behind the persona.
Yeah.
For example, I'm a big wrestling fan.
Yeah.
I've been a pro wrestling fan my whole life. And
What you gonna do, brother?
yeah, well, I understand that while the athletic things they're doing in the ring are fantastic, they don't hate each other.
Right. Right. When they
They
play the
don't
heel,
want
they're not really the bad guy.
exactly.
Yeah.
And it's that but I don't know. I don't know Cody Rhodes. I don't know Kenny Omega or any of the people that I saw Wednesday night. I know their persona.
Yeah,
And if I
you
were
know the
to,
character that they play. You don't know the person. Like the Ultimate Warrior, that I think he was like one of the best characters out there, talking about the difference between like wrestling life and then personal life. And before he died, he had those YouTube videos that he was doing. And so I started watching him. I'm like, man, this guy's totally different. I mean, he was always out there with the stuff he did in his promos back in the day. But talk about like character versus real person. There's a significant difference there.
Yeah, it's a very fine line, and it's hard to um, it's hard to know what to hold back. Some people hold back everything.
Well,
Some
I'll give an
people,
example for me. I talk about my family, but I don't talk about personal things about my family. Like my son is on my show, but I don't talk about things like where does he go to high school and who's his girlfriend. I don't talk about those kind of things. Personal
right?
aspects of his life, but we don't talk about. We talk about he likes music. We talk about uh, non-descriptors type stuff. Meta talk almost.
Yeah,
It's super. It's not superficial because it's genuine. It's real, but it's not that underlying. This is this is Adam Messer, and I like whatever. Blah 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 blah. Like I'll give an example. Before the show, I wanted to meet with some of my friends and have a coffee. You know, that's not
yeah,
normally something I would talk about on the show. I'm just bringing it up as an example. Something we wouldn't talk about. But there's a need to know and there's a not need to know. It's like th-
absolutely.
you get some
I
people
have
that they get
some.
obsessed, and you're like, oh, hold on, man.
I have some friends who don't even mention the fact that they are married
Yeah,
publicly,
yeah, yeah.
much
That's true.
less anything about their spouse or partner. Most of my friends that have kids are similar to what you're doing. They mention that they have a kid, but most of the writers that I know that have children don't ever say their names publicly until those kids turn 18 and can then make the decision.
Yeah. Well, that's how we are. My wife and I, we're very private about our family, and just to protect them because they're so and I hate to say it, like but back in the day, you remember when Halloween they used to give out pennies and apples. You remember that?
Yeah,
And then they stopped
sure.
doing the apples because people were putting like needles and razor blades and stuff, and it kind of changed everything. It was almost like the stranger danger, whatever. But it was because like Adam Welsh, the code Adam is a national thing for a lost child call out. You know
Yeah,
that unfortunately with the internet, and I mean I guess you and I are lucky enough, and like our generation, we were lucky enough to kind of get into the internet in our, like, I was 18 when I got a computer and got online. We were
I think
lucky
I was
enough. Huh?
I was 20. I was 20 or 21.
Yeah, like 95, 96 or whatever, around that time frame. I think it was 95 when I got onto AOL or whatever, or CompuServe. But we were lucky enough to have been able to grow up without that public scrutiny. And with social media, I mean, some people are oversharers, and like you said, the parasocial. What was the rest of it?
Oh, parasocial relationships.
Yeah. The person has a relationship with that personality that they think they know. They don't have a relationship with the actual person. But when they meet the actual
Right.
person, they're like, hey, you're my favorite author. And that person had met you before, right?
Yes.
But you didn't know that until you saw them.
Right. And it's one of those things where and I am pretty open because we don't have kids. So
Yeah.
my wife and I are both adults and can handle ourselves, but so I am more open than most folks. And when somebody, and I have developed a persona that is kind of wide open and snarky and funny and
Oh, you did like a
or
wrestler type persona. You're like,
yeah, a little
yeah,
bit.
yeah, yeah. I get it. I get it. Well, talking about the same topic, yesterday I was talking with a person at the expo, and they were in a small town. They were journalists, and they had been approached by someone to go out with them, and they politely turned them down. Then the person turned into like, "Oh, I hate you, and you're a snob," and da 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 da, and went from like loving that person to absolutely hating them. And I see that toxic, just the incel culture type stuff. I see that, and I'm like, you know what? You don't, just because you think you know someone doesn't mean that you have ownership you don't have any investment, you don't have any kind of stakeholder position with them, and I think that's one of the things, like, the toxic. I don't know. I don't want to call anybody out in particular, but there's a lot of that in
Right.
the nerd community. Um, you know,
There's a lot of that in every community
yeah,
now. And I feel like a big chunk of it comes from the anonymity of the internet.
it is. Yeah, it is.
We're all brave behind a keyboard.
I think one of the funniest
I,
memes I saw was a lot of people think that they're keyboard warriors and haven't been punched in the face lately.
yeah,
It's like you wouldn't say something to somebody's face that you would say online because you're afraid. You probably get socked in the mouth. It's like no.
absolutely. So it's one of those things where, as we can have more accountability,
Mm-hmm.
I think that's good for everyone.
Yeah, I think setting boundaries too, because like I said with the events, um, I'll give you an example. One of the folks that came to my event yesterday, they I guess they're estranged from their spouse or whatever, and they said that they just were afraid that the spouse was going to show up. I contacted the spouse and I said, I'm not getting in the middle of your issues, but you are not permitted to come to my event. I just want to give you a heads up. Um, please don't show up, or I will have to escort you out. And that was that.
Yeah.
And I've had that before. Like at my con last year, I had a problem where one of my guests was approached. She had been a guest the year before, like 2 years ago, and she had been approached by a guest that I had last year. The guest was the spouse of the guest, and the guy was sending this other previous guest like just a bunch of weird, obsessive kind of like toxic hit on me type stuff, and I had to tell the guest from last year, your husband is not allowed to come, and
Yeah.
that was a really awkward conversation. I said I will refund your money if because it was I charged like $50 for the table spaces for some folks,
Sure.
and so I said I'll refund your money if you don't want to come because of this. I said, but and the other person that he was harassing wasn't even going to be there, but because of the way he was behaving, I had to say he's not allowed to come here at all, because if he would do that to one person, he would do it to other people.
Absolutely. You can't have people need to not be jerks.
Right.
And people need to understand that event organizers talk.
Yes.
There are Facebook groups for event organizers.
Yes, I'm in several of them.
And that behavior has consequences.
Yeah, you can't be a total a-hole and expect everybody just to say it's okay. A matter of fact, I think that's one of the good things about the internet. It's like we do have a chance to, share those experiences and try to help the next person from getting snookered.
Yes. Absolutely.
What not I just want to change topics here real quick. Let's talk about we could go I'll be honest with you, that's one of the things that aggravates me a lot about that, and and I try to promote civility, like civil discourse, and I try to do my part and create a friendly environment as much as I can when I'm doing an event. But we go on that for hours and hours and hours. But let's talk about your new stuff. We talked about the con. SagaCon
Yeah.
is coming up. We talked about you've got over 100 books in publication for your Falstaff Books. What's on the horizon? What is coming up?
Well, we'll have a new Quincy Harker novel by the end of this year.
Nice. That's the one you're going to finish today?
That's the one I've got to finish today. We'll have a first novel by an author named J. Daniel Fatt, and it's called Onlyist. It should come out at the very beginning. It should come out either late this month or early December. And it's a fantastic far future science fiction novel we've got several debuts coming that I'm really excited about. Onlyest is one. White Spirit from Amy Ravenel is another one that's a debut that's coming out this year. We will be at Atomicon in Charleston, South Carolina in 2 weeks.
Which one's that one?
It's a small convention at the Hilton Garden Inn at North Charleston.
Okay. What's the name of it?
Atomicon.
Oh, okay. I didn't hear that part. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Atomicon.
Yeah,
okay. Yeah, Charleston's only
Atomicon.
about an hour drive from Savannah.
Yeah. And it's a great little convention. Mike Cole is the guest of honor. He's a military fantasy writer who also has a new TV show on the History Channel with Michael Livingstone, who's a historical fantasy writer and is also going to be at the convention. Faith Hunter is an urban fantasy writer. She's the special guest.
Oh, nice.
I'll be running a D&D one-shot at the con with some of the other writer guests.
Cool. What else you got coming up in 2020?
Oh, in 2020, my goodness. I've already booked something like 15 conventions.
I know you said something about you had done less conventions but had more productivity this year.
Yes.
So are you still working on that strategy?
I am. We're going to look at doing about 20 cons a year from here on out. When I did 40 in 2018, and that was too many. It burned me out.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I could imagine. I used to do like 2 or 3 a year, and that was enough for me. I was like, oh gosh. And they were all here in Savannah, like around Savannah.
When we, now that we have more people and we can work multiple conventions at a time, and I don't have to go to every convention, we can diversify a little more. And some of my authors, my associate publisher, we have a convention coordinator, we have more people, so it doesn't always have to be me.
That's good. Yeah, and you know what? I think that is one of the best ways to expand. And it's hard though to get people that are trustworthy, and that you're never going to find anybody as committed as you are about your thing, right? But sometimes you find people that are like, they're very passionate, and then they're committed to the thing that you're doing in their own way because they want to, like they want to do the same thing that you're doing, and they want to be part of a movement, so that's cool that you have a nice staff of people that are working together on that.
Yeah, I'm really happy with how our expansion is going. It's going to allow us to continue to bring in new authors and continue to mentor new writers. So yeah, that's what we've got. Saga, obviously, we're going to work hard at doing another Authors and Dragons Con in 2020. Authors and Dragons is a Dungeons and Dragons live play podcast that I'm on every 2 weeks.
Oh, cool.
And we've done 100 and some episodes over the past 4 years. And this year we did a convention in Vegas.
Oh, nice.
So we're working on finding a space and doing it again in 2020.
Oh, that'd be great.
Yeah.
What we've got about 5 minutes left, John.
Sure.
What do you say to the fledgling publishers out there? Because, like, I'll be honest with you, I've got the Savannah Quill Publishing House. The only thing I've published with it is my own novella. I put out a magazine called the Savannah Quill in 2017, just interviewing people and talking about authors and writers and interviews and stuff like that. And then I'm going to be doing this horror anthology. But what would you say to fledgling, like little micro publishers like me? What's like something that, we can work on that is like foundational?
Editorial.
Editorial.
Make your editorial as strong as humanly possible. Pour all your money into editorial. Because if the book is fantastic, people will find it. If your anthology is incredible, your writers will be excited about promoting it, and they will help you promote it.
I'm excited because three of my authors are three of your authors. Well, I don't
Okay,
know if
cool.
Rachel is or not, but Bobby Nash is going to be doing it. Alidria Hurt, Rachel Brune. I don't know if she's actually worked for you yet or not,
Not
but
yet.
not yet. But she's wonderful. But we've got about 10 people, and
Great.
I'm aiming for that. Um, One of the things, so crazy, but one of the things I was thinking was I wanted to do this like annually, because what I wanted to do was a sci-fi one, but I don't know enough sci-fi writers to make it work. And I did open it for submissions, so I had a couple of submissions or whatever. But I wanted to go with the people that I knew and I felt like had strong writing skills and that were good storytellers.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm pretty excited about that. But I'm glad that you said that about editing because that's one of the skill sets that I've been working on, and I'm actually going to be cutting my teeth on editing with this one. And Alidria Hurt is going to be an associate editor with me on it. So I've been working with her a lot down here in Savannah, and she actually narrated my Wrong Turn story for me. So
Oh, nice.
yeah, it was really cool. But that's really cool. What's a good book on editing that you like?
I don't know a great editing book, but I recommend that everybody who wants to make books
Mm-hmm.
read On Writing by Stephen King,
One of my favorites.
Goal, Motivation, and Conflict by Deb Dixon,
Okay.
and this next one is a threefer. They're all by Malcolm Gladwell.
Oh, I love Malcolm Gladwell.
Everyone should read The Tipping Point,
Yes.
Blink, and Outliers.
I've read all three of those and they're wonderful. And you know what? The audiobooks, he actually narrates them.
Oh, nice.
I love it because I mean, like that is, especially Outliers. Oh my gosh, that is one of the ones I'm like, you know, all these different factors that he reveals to you about the folks that were successful. It's like the time and place and then the work. I'm like, oh my gosh.
Yeah. People need to think about writing as a business.
Mm-hmm.
So Gladwell writes business books and development books.
Yeah.
So,
And he doesn't tell you how to act or behave. He's not like a
yeah,
guru or type thing. He's really just taught. I mean, like I feel like he's kind of like a historian the way he describes the folks, like a bio, the bios or the biographies of the folks that he's talking about. I feel like he really dives deep into the history of their story.
yeah.
I want to give a shout out. I go to this coffee shop right down here. It's called Fox and Figs right next to us. And
Mm-hmm.
talking about art stuff and events or whatever, they're actually doing their Fox and Figs 2-year anniversary next Saturday. It's going to be a Fox and Figs Fig Fest Volume 2, but it's next Saturday, y'all, from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. And it's right here at Fox and Figs Cafe. It's 321 Haversham Street. But I just love those folks down there. I always before the show I always go get an Americano. Sometimes I'll get an iced one. Sometimes I'll get a regular one. What's your favorite drink, John?
Mountain Dew.
Mountain
Me
Dew.
and Bobby Nash, man.
All right.
This one, me,
Good old
me
Bobby.
and Bobby Nash
Oh.
probably support half of the Mountain Dew consumption in the southeastern United States.
Wow.
You know, I like a good Angry Orchard. I like Firefly sweet tea vodka.
Yeah.
But no, really, it's Mountain Dew.
Awesome. One last thing before we go. Where can people find your stuff at? What's the easiest link that they can find?
FalstaffBooks.com is the easiest place to find my books, the books that Falstaff publishes. You can sign up for our newsletter and get information on free books. You can then follow our events. You can follow us on. You can follow me on Twitter at John Hartness. You can follow Falstaff Books at Falstaff Books.
Okay.
We're not terribly original on our social media. It's either at John Hartness or at Falstaff Books everywhere.
I've actually loved that because my show used to be called Muses, Memoirs, and More, and I changed it to the Adam Messer Show. I just have been
Yeah,
doing everything Adam Messer because for simplification, because it's just too much, So I like the Savannah Quill. The thing is called the Savannah Authors Expo now because the
yeah.
Savannah Quill was like I like the name, but people it was confusing. Savannah Authors Expo, oh, it's obvious. So I love that you do that. The John Hartness or Falstaff Books that's a great way to do it. Well, John, thank you so much for being on the show today, man. We're gonna have you back on, probably sometime in next year, or early
Sure.
part of next year or whatever. But I really appreciate you being on the show today.
Well, thank you very much for having me, Adam. I appreciate it.
Awesome. All right, everybody. Coming up next is the Savannah at Night, which actually, ironically, I'm going to be a guest on the show tonight, talking with Bill Cooper and the gang. So, yeah. All right. So stay tuned and coming up at the 5 o'clock hour.